My name is Monique. I'm 40 years old. And when my husband, Derek, 42, kicked me in the stomach while I was pregnant, causing me to lose our baby, he thought he'd shattered me. He thought he'd won. He had no idea he'd just ignited a fire in me, a fight that would change everything. This is my story. And if you're listening, I'm asking you to stay with me. It's a story of pain, of betrayal, but also of strength I didn't know I had. Before I dive in, I want to thank you for being here. Your presence means more than you can imagine. It reminds me I'm not alone. So please, drop a comment below. Tell me where you're tuning in from and what time it is there. And if my story resonates with you, if you have a story of your own, email me. I'll share my email in the description. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. 6 months before the night that broke my world apart, and then, against all odds, began to stitch it back together. I sat at my polished oak kitchen table. That table was a relic from a different time, a happier time, when love felt real and hope wasn't just a word I whispered to myself in the dark. The late afternoon light poured through the lace curtains. Derek had insisted we buy curtains that screamed quiet elegance, but, in truth, let in just enough light to expose every flaw, every speck of dust, every hidden sorrow in our home. The golden dust motes danced in the beams, and I watched them, mesmerized, as if they held answers I couldn't find. My leather-bound journal lay open before me, its creamy pages a silent confidant, the only place I could pour out the chaos raging inside me. My hand trembled as I uncapped my fountain pen. The fine nib hovered over the page, and the slight shake in my fingers was enough to make the ink feather at the edges of my words. It was a physical echo of the constant, low-grade tremor in my soul, a fear that never left, a weight that pressed down on me every single day. In neat, careful script that hid the storm within, I wrote about Derek Sanders, my husband. I wrote about the way he'd sneered at my latest paycheck. I'd been so proud of that check, a bonus earned through sleepless nights and endless weekends poured into a grueling project at work. It was a small rebellion, a quiet proof of my competence in a life where I felt increasingly worthless. But I'd made a mistake. I'd left the pay stub on the granite countertop, a rare slip in my usual vigilance to keep my triumphs hidden. Derek had glanced at it, his eyes cold and dismissive, and laughed. It wasn't a laugh of joy or amusement. It was a short, sharp sound, like a blade slicing through the air. Chump change, he'd called it, waving the paper as if it were a piece of garbage. That's cute. Monique. Barely covers the gas for my car for a month. He'd dropped it back on the counter, letting it flutter down like trash, and with it, my fleeting pride collapsed. Shame and inadequacy settled in its place, familiar companions in my marriage. I turned the page in my journal, the paper whispering softly in the quiet room. I wrote about the time, just a month earlier, when Derek had shoved me against the hallway wall. The argument had been so trivial, I couldn't even recall what sparked it. Maybe I'd forgotten to pick up his dry cleaning. Maybe I'd bought the wrong brand of his imported coffee. But his real anger stemmed from a multi-million-dollar deal that had gone sour at work, a storm brewing in him that needed a target. And I, as always, was the closest shore for it to crash upon. The impact had stolen my breath, the back of my head hitting the wall with a sickening thud that echoed in my ears for days. A deep, ugly bruise bloomed on my shoulder. A secret I nursed with ice packs hidden under dish towels, concealed by carefully chosen cardigans and high necklines. For weeks, I'd carried that pain, both physical and emotional, like a badge of my failure. I recorded his words, too, with chilling precision. 2 weeks ago, after a sleepless night listening to his dismissive snores, I'd found a sliver of courage. I'd confronted him about his coldness, the way he looked through me as if I were a smudged pane of glass, unimportant and invisible. He'd leaned in close, his breath carrying the faint scent of his expensive single malt scotch, and hissed, his voice a venomous lullaby. "No one's going to believe you, Monique. No one." I paused my writing, the pen's nib hovering, a single drop of ink threatening to fall and mar the page. His words stared back at me, a catalogue of cruelties, a record of my private hell. I'd documented them as if they were evidence for a trial that would never come. Who would judge who would be the jury? My children. Perhaps, when they were old enough to understand the shadows that filled our home. Slamming the journal shut, the sound too loud in the cathedral-like silence of the house. I felt despair wash over me. How long could I carry this alone? My journal, once a confidant, now felt like a co-conspirator in my silence, a damning record of my cowardice. I tucked it beneath the mattress of the spare bed I'd started sleeping in a concession I'd made months ago to give Derek space for his late-night international calls, rising on shaky legs. I began the ritual of preparing dinner, a meal he'd likely criticize or ignore. That night, at 9 p.m., the oppressive quiet was shattered by Derek's voice booming from the dining room, which he'd turned into his secondary office. The antique table, once a symbol of our shared dreams, was now scarred with coffee rings and the gouges of his impatient pen. His tone, usually warm with clients, was sharp and imperious as he berated a subordinate over the speakerphone. "I need more from the team, more revenue, more commitment, more damn hunger. This isn't a charity. People, results are all that matter." He slammed the phone down, the plastic cracking under the force. His eyes, dark and stormy, found me in the doorway. I'd only been on my way to get a glass of water, my throat dry from unspoken words and unshed tears. But to him, my presence was an intrusion, a challenge to his authority. "You hear me," he growled, his voice low and menacing as he pushed back from the mahogany table and stalked toward me, his movements predatory. "I need results around here. I'm bleeding myself dry to keep this empire afloat." He gestured vaguely at our home, a home I'd designed, a fact he'd long forgotten or chosen to ignore. "And you," he sneered, his lip curling, "with your little designer salary, your hobby job, you barely cover the utilities. I'm tired of carrying all the weight in this marriage." My pulse raced, fear spreading like ice water through my veins. I forced my breathing to stay even, my face a mask of neutrality I'd perfected over years. I opened my mouth to respond, to say my salary was substantial, that I contributed to our home, that I made it a home. But he cut me off with a dismissive flick of his hand. "Save it. You wouldn't know real business if it kicked you in the stomach." The casual cruelty of his words, the violent metaphor, hit me like a physical blow. A memory flashed another shove, another whispered threat. "No one will believe you." I swallowed my tears, the bitterness rising like bile, and turned back to the kitchen. Silence was my shield, my only defense against the storm that was my husband, the man I'd once loved with every fiber of my being. Now, a stranger in a familiar, handsome face. My journal became a testament to that slow, agonizing transformation, a love that had curdled into fear. In the weeks that followed, my world shrank. The walls seemed to close in, the air growing thinner. My life became a series of carefully choreographed routines, a dance to keep Derek's temper dormant. Each morning, I rose before him, moving through the silent house like a ghost, brewing his coffee just the way he liked it strong. Black, in his favorite oversized mug, ready the moment he descended the grand staircase he was so proud of. I kissed my children, Jasmine, 16 and thoughtful, and Elijah, 12 and boisterous, on their foreheads before they rushed to school. Their energy was a balm on my frayed nerves, but also a painful reminder of the joy I'd lost. Their laughter, rare in our sterile home, felt like a language I was forgetting. Every evening, I returned from my job as a senior graphic designer at a prestigious firm, a role where I was respected, valued, admired, to a house that felt hollow, a stage set lacking warmth. I'd set my grocery bags on the cold granite countertops, putting everything away with a servant's efficiency to avoid disturbing Derek's late-night work calls. The office door always closed. I threw myself into my work, finding solace in the precision of color palettes, the logic of typography, the satisfaction of seeing my designs in print or on websites. My career was the one part of my life Derek hadn't suffocated, though he tried to diminish it. But behind our beautiful home's closed doors, tension simmered, a constant poison in the air. When I dared to speak up questioning his anger over misplaced keys or his extravagant spending on clients that never included me, I met a cold, dismissive wall. "Don't make this a thing. Monique," he'd say, his voice flat, before turning to his phone, rendering me invisible. Or worse, he'd lean in, his eyes glittering, and whisper, "No one's going to believe you. Everyone knows you're sensitive." Each time, my confidence, already fragile, eroded further. I began to believe him. Maybe I was too sensitive. Maybe this was just marriage for some. One Saturday, I broke over lukewarm coffee and stale croissants with my best friend, Tia Roberts, in a quiet cafe near our church. My silence cracked. Tia had watched me fade for years, her concern a constant presence. "Mo," she said, her voice thick with worry, her hand covering mine. "This has to stop. He's killing you by inches. You're stretched so thin you're about to snap. You deserve better than being talked down to, shoved around. I've seen the bruises you hide with scarves, even in summer. We can get you help." I stared at my latte, its foam heart perfect but fleeting. My own heart felt broken beyond repair. A tear fell, dripping onto the table. "I can't," I whispered, my voice ash and defeat. "He controls everything. Tia, the house, the money, the insurance. He'll take the kids. He said he'd paint me as an unfit mother, with his charm, his connections. Who'd believe me? He's Derek Sanders, pillar of the community." Tia's grip tightened, her eyes burning with conviction. "I believe you? And that's a start." Her words pierced my despair, but fear kept me paralyzed. Every time I imagined leaving, Derek's warnings echoed. "You'll be on the street. Monique, no one will help you. You'll come crawling back." Then, on a clear spring evening, 3 days before our 17th anniversary, a day I dreaded, everything changed. Alone in the living room, the house eerily silent, I touched my still flat stomach. I was pregnant, after years of failed attempts, countless doctor visits, and tearful hopes. I was pregnant. Dread settled in my chest, heavy and cold, How could I bring a child into this fear-filled house? But with the dread came a fierce determination, a protective instinct that eclipsed my fear. This child would not grow up in a home of silence and terror. This baby was a sign, a catalyst. That night, when Derek returned, surprisingly affable after a client dinner, I decided to try one last time to reach the man I'd married, as he drove me to the grocery store for his late-night ice cream. I spoke into the tense silence of the car. "Derek," I said, my voice trembling, "I'm pregnant." He glanced at me in the rear-view mirror, his eyes unreadable. For a moment, I thought I saw surprise, but it vanished. "Congratulations," he said flatly, devoid of joy, his attention back on the road. My heart sank, but I pushed on, reaching for his hand. He yanked it away as if burned. "Don't talk about that now," he snapped. "You're always so dramatic. You'll never be ready for what's coming." In the brightly lit grocery store, the silence between us was suffocating. I moved like an automaton, selecting his artisanal salted caramel ice cream and juice for myself, my hands shaking. At the checkout, Derek made a show of paying, swiping his platinum card with magnanimity for the tired cashier, who offered me a small, sympathetic smile. As we left, he leaned close, his whisper venomous. "You better be careful. Monique, very careful. No one's going to believe you if something goes wrong." His words, a sinister echo of his usual threat, stole my breath. 2 nights later, the night before our anniversary, everything shattered. An argument over a late utility bill I'd forgotten to pay ignited the inferno always simmering beneath our lives. Derek roared about my incompetence, my uselessness, his frustration likely from a work failure finding its target in me. He backed me against the upstairs hallway wall, his face contorted with rage, his voice a torrent of abuse. As I turned to escape, he struck, not a slap or a punch to the face, nothing that would show. It was a single, brutal blow to my stomach. The pain was blinding, a white-hot starburst that stole my breath and sent agony through my body. I gasped, a strangled sound, and crumpled to the floor, clutching my stomach, desperate to protect the life within. Tia, who'd come over with an anniversary gift, heard my cry from the living room. She rushed in, saw me writhing, Derek standing over me, his face a mask of shock and rage. She didn't scream. She didn't confront him. She pulled out her phone and dialed 911. In the sterile ER bay, the world was a nightmare of hushed voices, the beep of the heart monitor, and a roaring vacuum in my ears. Grief was a physical weight, making each breath a struggle. Tia's hand gripped mine, her face anguished. The ER team moved efficiently, their questions distant. I thought of Derek's promise, "No one's going to believe you." And I believed him. I was broken. He'd won. My baby, my secret hope, was gone. Dr. Raul Martinez, the attending physician, had kind eyes, weary with compassion. His touch was gentle during the ultrasound, but when he turned off the monitor, the silence was absolute, broken only by my sobs and Tia's whispers. "Monique," he said, his voice low. "I'm so profoundly sorry. We've lost the pregnancy." The words, though expected, hit like another blow. My resolve shattered. He was right, no one would believe me. But then Dr. Martinez did something unexpected. He leaned forward, his expression shifting to a steely resolve. "Monique, listen carefully. What happened tonight wasn't a marital dispute. It was felony assault. The law recognizes it. As an ER physician, I've seen this too many times. Last month, I treated a woman who said she fell. I followed protocol, sent her home. Weeks later, her husband killed her. I promised myself never again. Not if I can help it. He looked into my eyes, and for the first time in years, I felt seen not as a failed wife, but as a person who'd suffered injustice. I'm a mandated reporter. He continued, I must notify the police, but we have a choice. I can file an anonymous report that your husband could talk his way out of, or you can let me call Detective Eva Harding, who runs the domestic violence unit. She's the best. She'll believe you. I believe you. Monique, your fight can start tonight. A flicker of something not hope, but a primal need for justice cut through my grief. I looked at Tia, her eyes fierce with determination. She nodded. I turned to Dr. Martinez and gave a shaky nod. In that moment, my life shifted. My fight began not with a journal entry, but with a doctor's gaze and a phone call. Dr. Martinez made 2 calls. The first was to Carol Jenkins, a social worker who arrived quickly, offering a secure hotel for me and my children, covered by a victim's fund, with forms for a protective order and a hotline number. The second was to Detective Harding. An hour later, she walked in tall, in a practical blazer, her eyes sharp and understanding. Her handshake was firm, her demeanor purposeful. With Tia holding my hand, I told my story, from the first shove to the final blow, Derek's threat echoing. No one's going to believe you. My voice cracked, but Detective Harding listened, her expression hardening. When I finished, she said, I believe you, Monique. Her words were a balm. She turned to Dr. Martinez. Your report on your desk by 7 a.m., he said. It'll list the cause of fetal demise as blunt force trauma, with prior injuries consistent with escalating abuse. As Harding left, she said, Rest, Mrs. Sanders. We'll take it from here. For the first time in years, I felt a tremor of hope. The next morning, in a clean hotel room, the grief was a hollow ache, but action hummed in the air. Tia stayed with me, a steadfast guardian. At 10 a.m., her phone buzzed with a text from a paralegal friend. Police just cuffed Derek Sanders in his meeting. It's serious. Tia's eyes widened. They did it. Mo. The details came later. Detective Harding and 2 officers walked into Derek's office, past his fawning staff, into his glass-walled conference room. He tried to laugh it off, but Harding read his rights, and the cuffs clicked shut. He was charged with felony assault and second-degree feticide. His world of invincibility crumbled. The weeks that followed were a blur of legal proceedings, but I was never alone. Tia was my rock, helping me explain to Jasmine and Elijah. Their loyalty, Jasmine's quiet. We knew. Mom, and Elijah's tight hug gave me strength. Dr. Martinez connected me with Dr. Anya Sharma, a therapist who helped me navigate panic attacks. Detective Harding and Alicia Rios, the assistant DA, guided me through the justice system. Alicia explained the case's pillars, my testimony, and Dr. Martinez's report. The assault charge was solid. The feticide charge was complex, but reflected my loss. She warned me Derek's lawyer, Marcus Thorne, would attack my character. Hold on to your truth, she said. The evidence is on our side. At the bail hearing, walking into the courtroom felt like entering a lion's den. Derek's family glared, but Alicia's determined smile steadied me. Thorne painted Derek as a devoted husband, me as unstable, claiming I'd fallen. Alicia presented the 911 call, police report, bruise photos, and Dr. Martinez's affidavit. Fetal demise resulted from blunt force trauma, inconsistent with a fall. The judge, stern and unyielding, denied bail. Derek's eyes met mine, hollow with the realization that everyone believed me. The months before the trial were grueling. My life in limbo, in a small apartment with the kids. My journal stayed untouched. I was preparing to testify. Alicia prepped us meticulously, warning that Thorne would attack my credibility. The trial was a brutal dissection of my life. Thorne portrayed me as manipulative, using my loss to punish Derek. On the stand, I recounted our love, his control, the shoves, the fear, the blow that took my baby. My voice grew steady, the truth untangling years of silence. Thorne's cross-examination was relentless, twisting my words, questioning my sanity. But I held firm. My husband struck me in the stomach while I was pregnant. Dr. Martinez's testimony was unshakable, his charts showing how the blow caused the miscarriage. Thorne suggested bias, but Martinez stood firm. My duty is to my patient's safety. Tia's emotional account of the 911 call and my years of despair was powerful. Derek's polished defense claimed I'd fallen, but Alicia's cross-examination dismantled him. She played his voicemail. No one's going to believe you. His mask crumbled, his credibility gone. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. Guilty, the foreman said, on both charges. A sob of relief tore from me. Justice prevailed. The judge sentenced Derek to 15 years. The divorce was simple, granting me the house, custody, and a settlement. The weight of years lifted. My fight was over, but my healing began. To everyone watching, this is my story, but it's also a call to action. If you've been moved, if you've felt my pain or my triumph, please like this video. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to join me on this journey. And comment below. Tell me your story, your thoughts. Your voice matters. Together, we're not alone. Thank you.